The Israeli Knesset began its winter session this week, with Prime Minister Netanyahu calling on the Palestinian Authority to stop making unilateral moves, such as requesting statehood at the UN. He also said Israel needs to remain strong to counter Iran's quest for nuclear weapons. This is a little more than an hour.
The Honorable President of Israel, Shimon Peres, Honorable former President Yitzhak Navon and his wife, former First Lady Mrs. Herzog, Speaker of the Knesset Reuven Rivlin, ministers, Knesset members in the present and in the past, former speakers of the Knesset, the Ombudsman Michael Lidenstadt, and the legal counsel to the government, families, our soldiers, our missing soldiers, the heads of the religions, honorable ambassadors, and the citizens of Israel. My friends, the Knesset returned to the winter session while regional events that are the most dramatic in our generation. The Arab Street has awakened. Old regimes have fallen, and additional regimes are wavering, and new regimes are starting to rise. Nobody can guarantee their quality or their stability of these new regimes, and nobody can guarantee their attitude toward Israel. I must say, this attitude was never great, and regretfully, it is not expected to improve. Most of these regimes, not in the short term. The new regimes are dependent on the mob, that many of these in the mob were instigated by anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist propaganda. This started even before the establishment of the State of Israel and is continuing to this day. With the results of the elections in Tunisia, if they serve as an example of what will come in the future, we can expect that there will be components with a dominant Islamistic component. And most of the countries surrounding us, the Islamistic movements are the most organized and the strongest. And the liberal forces that would like to see progress as we see it, these forces are divided and weak. With the religious extremism will not moderate, it is doubtful whether the hopes of the Arab Spring will be realized. Maybe it will have to be delayed, maybe for a generation, until this new wave will pass by. And until the progressive movements will be given the opportunity to lead the Arab world in a new path. My friends, if I had to summarize what we can expect in the region, I would have used two terms: instability and uncertainty. The fall of Gaddafi in Libya and the exit of the American forces in Iraq, the new government in Tunis, the upcoming elections in Egypt, all of these express the great changes that are taking place around us. These changes can increase the instability within the countries and the instability among the countries. There are regional powers, and these will try to increase their influence on the new regimes. And this influence will not be to our benefit or for us. And one of these regional powers is Iran, who is continuing to armor itself in nuclear weapons. Nuclear Iran will constitute a threat on Israel and the entire world, and especially on us. Vis-à-vis this uncertainty and instability before us, we need two things: strength and responsibility. Strength in all areas, security, economically and socially. And responsibility in maneuvering the boat of our country in the stormy water that we find ourselves. I'm asking that you do not disturb. We must continue to build the force of Israel in all areas of security in order to provide an answer to all of our challenges. In the last few days, we found out that one of these challenges is contending with many thousands rockets and missiles that are at disposal of our enemies. These missiles and anti-missiles only give us partial solution and certainly provide security for our citizens, but we want to deploy other systems in the rest of the country. But this concept cannot rely only on defense, but we have to also depend on our ability to attack, which is the cornerstone of deterrence. We will act with determination against those who threaten the security of Israel. Two things guide us. Whoever wants to kill you, you kill him, and whoever attacks us, blood will be on his head. Knesset member Wolverson, I'm warning you. Knesset member Nissim Ze'ev, don't disturb. Please listen to the Prime Minister. Please do not disturb. For 2,000 years, our nation could not implement these two principles to protect itself. These two principles of defense, and the Jewish people paid the heaviest price because of this inability. All of this has changed with the establishment of the State of Israel and the establishment of the IDF. Government of Israel acted according to these principles. They fought those who threatened us and attacked those who attacked us. Since I became a prime minister, I instructed the IDF to act against the terrorist organizations. This is how we acted against the terrorist attack from the Sinai. The person who initiated it was liquidated several hours afterwards, and this is how we acted in the end of last week. And this is where we should thank again the IDF soldiers and the people in the intelligence community who work tirelessly around the clock in order to protect our country and to protect all of us. We will continue to act with all our strengths to protect us, and we will continue to act responsibly vis-à-vis this complex reality. An expression of this complexity we saw several months ago Knesset member Ahmad Tzipi. Knesset member Tzipi, I'm calling you to order. I'm calling you to order. I'm calling you to order. Knesset member Nissim Ze'ev. Now the Prime Minister is talking. It could be that maybe some of the Knesset members didn't pay attention that we are in a complex situation. We saw it 2 months ago, that when a mob attacked the Israeli embassy in Cairo, this mob didn't care whether we have an agreement or not agreement. These were very tense moments and very complex moments. And I would like to thank Minister Barak and Minister Lieberman that we acted together with the American government and with the Egyptian government, and we brought this event to a successful conclusion, and we were able to bring the families back home. This reality that changes fast in our region poses many obstacles and also many opportunities that we cannot see. In this changing world, Israel is becoming fast a leading force in the cyber world, what is called the computer wars, and our special capabilities in this area these special capabilities of Israel bring many important countries to want to cooperate with us. This provides us with an opportunity to have new partnerships that did not exist in the past, and I expect that in the future it will become a very important factor in the international arena. In order to strengthen our capabilities in this area, I established a cyber headquarters. This is the future, and we are already there. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not disturb. Knesset member Khamenin.
אני מבקש לשמור על השקט. אל תעצרו. חבר הכנסת יואל חסון, אני מבקש ממך לעזור.
Knesset member Hassan, please leave the session. Please leave the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not disturb the Prime Minister.
מחויב כלפי הכנסת את הודעתו ביום זה. חבר הכנסת, אתם רוצים? אני מבקש.
טיפוח העוצמה והאחריות
This, what is required to protect Israel is also the key for our striving peace. You make peace with the strong and not with the weak. The stronger Israel will be, the peace will be closer. The nation, the people in Israel is united in its desire for peace, but we are seeking true peace, peace that is based on the recognition of the Jewish people to a national country. Is based on security. We are willing to have compromises, but we do not intend, even before the earthquake in this region, I insisted on our security needs, and more so now. In the negotiations for peace, we will insist on our national interests, primarily the security. They said about me that I am a tough negotiator. I know that it was said in criticism, but I see it as a compliment. And therefore I want to say to the head of the Palestinian Authority, President Abbas, Knesset members, I'm calling you to order. Knesset member Regev, please do not disturb. I want you to show restraint. I'm calling you to order. Please remove Knesset member Mola. Please do not disturb the Prime Minister.
ואת התוכנית של הממשלה לשנה הבאה. תודה רבה, אדוני. תודה רבה. אין יותר סובלנות. אין יותר סובלנות. אתה רוצה שאני אקרא לך לסדר?
אני רוצה לומר
I want to tell President Abbas, I'm not tough regarding the peace. I'm tough regarding the security of Israel and its citizens. And I will continue to act like that because this is my uppermost obligation and my basic obligation as the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm willing to have true peace with our neighbors, but I do not intend to endanger our security. Any peace agreement has to be accompanied with security arrangements, otherwise it will not hold. And for the negotiations to be completed, we need to begin it. I called the Palestinian Authority and leadership to start direct negotiations. I called them in my speech in Bar-Ilan University, in my speech here in the Knesset. I called them to do so in my speech in the American Congress and in the last time I spoke at the UN and many other times in between. And I responded positively to the quartet proposals. I must say that regretfully, the Palestinians continue to refuse to negotiate directly with us. Instead of sitting with us at the negotiations table, they preferred to ally themselves with the Hamas. We will not sit by idly with these steps that hurt Israel, which violate the basic commitment that the sides took to solve the dispute between us through negotiations. While we are supporting the establishment of a Palestinian state, the Palestinians are striving for a Palestinian state without a peace agreement. This is the reality, and everybody knows that. And I do not intend to agree to it. And no responsible leader would have agreed to it. Our friend, the United States, is strongly supporting us for the Palestinian unilateral action in the UN, and we greatly appreciate it. And I know that those who doubted our relations with the United States, but the alliance between us is strong, and the cooperation between us encompasses many important areas. This alliance is based on deep support by the American people, based on common values, common objectives, and this support is getting stronger in the last few years. The United States see, like we do, the great importance the non-compliance of our agreements with Egypt and Jordan. It is of Israel's interest to keep the peace with Jordan and Egypt. Last year, we strengthened our cooperation with many countries in the region, from Greece until Cyprus, and as far as Turkey. We saw that when there are disputes between us, we assist one another during troubled times as a result of natural disasters. This is how Turkey acted when we had our great fire, and this is how we acted after the earthquake that happened in Turkey. I hope that we will find in the future the way to improve the relations between the two countries. Strength and responsibility is what guides us, and the same tools we need to contend with the economic and social challenges. In the last few years, the world economy has undergone great changes. There is a storm. There are many Western countries that did not act responsibly and didn't pay attention to the danger, did not do what was needed. They find themselves at the brink of bankruptcy. It's not thousands are unemployed. Until now, this economic storm has not, Israel has not encountered it. And the way we acted economically contributed to it. There is a rule that everybody knows, that over time, whoever spends more money than he gets to be bankrupt. This rule that is true for the individual is also true for the country. Many countries forgot this rule, and that's why they pay dearly for it. Israel acted differently. He acted responsibly. Israel acted responsibly. This is how I acted when I was the Minister of the treasury, and this is how we act today. But we cannot create growth, which is essential for creating jobs, growth that is essential for the resources for health and society. We cannot create it only by safeguarding the budget to grow the economy. We have to cultivate competition, not monopolies, but fair competition for the benefit of the consumer. The competition is not an enemy of the consumer. It improves services, it reduces gaps, and it increases the standard of living. And the fact that we do not have competition in Israel is why our cost of living increases. And this is why a year ago I established, not a few months ago, but a year ago, I established a committee of centralization. And therefore, we are now implementing the recommendation about competition in the economy. Yesterday, in Safed, we canceled the taxes on gasoline, and we reduced taxes on consumption. And we increased the assistance to young couples, but these are only first steps. It's our intention. I'm happy that you all want to help. We intend to bring decisions in the Knesset to assist the citizens with responsibility for educating the young will cost less. Also, taxes will be less. I am very aware of all of the distresses. You spoke, Mr. Speaker. I am committed to solve, including decisions that we will pass in the Knesset in the present session. I promised you an answer, Knesset member. We are committed to act with full sensitivity to change our priorities, but I do not accept the claim that the free enterprise has bankrupt, that we have to go back to centralized system, an economy in which the citizen has to comply with the bureaucracy. We were already there and we will not go back there. This is how you destroy the economy.
או שאתה רוצה מחכה שאני אומר. רבותיי. אתה רוצה להמשיך עם זה? אז אני אבקש לך לצאת החוצה.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave the session. You cannot disturb. If you can't, Knesset member Gilon, please Knesset member Gilon takes care of the social needs, but we have to create the resources. We have to have a free competition. We have to, and this is exactly what are doing and intend to do in the infrastructure and also to invest in the periphery of the country. Yesterday, we inaugurated in Safed a new medical school. Knesset member Yachemovich, I'm calling you to order.
תודה רבה. אתם לא רואים שזה דבר שהוא כאש מתפתחת ברגע שאני מגיב בצורה מתונה לגבי אחד מיד. יש אנשים שמדברים כל הזמן, אין מילה שאומר...
There are people who talk all the time, but we can't go on like that.
תודה רבה. מרגע זה אנחנו נקשיב. חברת הכנסת יחימוביץ, זה לא...
Knesset member Yachemovich. Knesset member Yachemovich, don't you understand what I tell you? Yesterday, we dedicated in Safed, together with you, Mr. President, a new medical school. This is a great message to the Galilee. And soon, after a decade of promises, we will move the IDF bases to the south. And this is a good message to the Negev. We're a government that does, and not only promises. We built new bridges, new roads, and we take the government, the country out of the gridlock. Yesterday, I told them in Safed that 91 years ago, my grandfather and father went there. They got there from Jaffa. That was what in Tel Aviv at that time. They went on the train to Tiberias. And there they took all their belongings and they took a boat and went to Tiberias. And then went on the road through a difficult road to go to Rosh Pina, and then they had to change to horses. And this trip took 3 days, 91 years ago. A few years ago, it took 3 hours. And I asked the mayor of Chatzor, Mr. Swissa, how long does it take him now? It takes 1 hour and 40 minutes. And I told him now it will even be reduced further, because soon all the roads system will change. In our vision, there will be a route without any stop signs from Metula to Eilat, and it hasn't been done. We're doing it. Knesset member Tirosh, I'm calling you to order. I'm asking you to leave the session. Please. Knesset member Tirosh, please leave the session. Please don't come back. You violate all the rules of the Knesset. Remove her immediately. Remove her immediately.
אני קורא לך לסדר פעם ראשונה. אם את לא מבינה שבכנסת ישראל, בתוך המערכת שבה מקבלים הכרעות, לא עושים הפגנות. חבר הכנסת,
Knesset member, don't ask me questions. No more questions. Thank you. Our objective to strengthen the periphery, but in the end, when the travel time to most parts of the country will be so short, we can do away with the concept of periphery. There's no, our state, a country is large in spirit. We are talented, but physically we are a small country, and there's no reason that in such a small country some parts will be disconnected, separate. And therefore, besides the roads and the trains, and whether you want to admit it or not, the great work we're doing, we're developing greatly the Galilee and the Negev. And this is how we will improve the lives of our citizens. That when all the citizens of the Galilee and the Negev, this is an important step, but the social revolution that we're implementing is in education. And many years that we went down in the first time because of the reforms that we implemented, we already see a change in the trend. We see improvement in the test scores of the children of Israel. And we initiated 2 years ago, Nobel laureate Professor Ada Yonat warned that without investment in education, she is fearful that there will not be here more Nobel Prize winners. And we took, and I took what she said seriously. And Professor Trachtenberg decided to assist in the revolution in higher education. We invested more than 7 billion shekels, and therefore I was happy to hear from the new Nobel laureate, Professor Danny Shechtman, that he identifies a change in the direction of our government. And he is correct, because between the winning by Professor Adat Yonat and Professor Shechtman, we initiated a new program, and therefore I want to promise you we will continue to invest, and we will have more Nobel Prize winners. Knesset members, I spoke today, and not very successfully, about strength and responsibility. And I want to talk about something that connects both of them, the unity. 2 weeks ago, we returned home Gilad Shalit after 5 years that he was in prison with the Hamas. Like the rest of the nation, I was also very excited when I saw Gilad going down the plane, and for several days the entire nation was unified, united, and excited around one soldier that we returned home. Last week, released in coordination with Egypt and with the assistance of the American government, Ilan Garpel and Israel Chasson for Kadima. Thank you, Israel.
האופוזיציה, ראש הממשלה קיבל אותה. מה צריך כל אחד? חברת הכנסת רגב.
Knesset member Regev. Last week, we released Ilan Garpel, who came from the United States and was wounded in the Second Lebanon War. We will continue act to the release of Yehuda Rabin that is in Egyptian jail. And I would like to ask Knesset member Solotkin to tell you and to the nation of Israel, I am not forgetting, but even for a moment, Jonathan Pollard, who is sitting in jail in the United States for 26 years. We will continue to act to bring him to Israel, and we will not stop asking what is the fate of our missing soldiers. The unity that brought us to act for one soldier proves our nation to unite. It manifests our strengths, our responsibility, and to our mutual guarantee. I believe in the strength of this unity also in moments of test in the Knesset. I believe that despite the disagreements between us, we will know in moments of these tests to act together for the important and common objectives to all of us. We will follow strength, responsibility, and unity. We have one country, and together we will guard it. Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Knesset member. All these questions ask later. I'm inviting the head of the opposition, Knesset member Tzipi Livni. Knesset member Hanin. Knesset member. The head of the opposition is going to talk, please. Honorable President of Israel, Mr. Shimon Peres, past presidents of Israel, judges of Israel, Speaker of the Knesset, the head of the protests in Israel. This is a session. The Honorable, the ministers of the Knesset government. In the beginning of this session of the Netanyahu government, Israel is isolated. A moment before the Arab Spring will bring about stormy rain. Israel is a moment before the only partner for settlement will disappear. Israel is after the Hamas got strengthened and will take control of Judea and Samaria. Israel is just a minute before the concept of two states will disappear, and there will only be one state, and the Jewish state will disappear. Israel is at a state when the middle class protested and before the young people will leave. Israel is a moment before we become one country of many tribes where each tribe determines its authority and law and its religious law, and this conflict is under the surface and will come up in the most difficult times. It's true that things look okay when there is no terror. The Palestinian Authority seems so distant. And when we seem to have government stability, it seems to this government that all is okay, but we deserve better. We deserve better in every area, politically, socially, and also economically. We deserve to be proud of Israel, but we do not deserve to see the state of Israel isolated unnecessarily, and Israel is very isolated today. I believe that we must reach a settlement based on two states, because this is the only way to guard the values of the State of Israel as a national home for the Jewish people and being a democratic state. But now that when the Likud also says two nations, I'm hearing that we cannot make progress because of the security. So let's talk about security, Mr. Prime Minister. Because we deserve better in security. We're all aware of it, that the Arab Spring could become the beginning of Islamic winter. We shouldn't close our eyes. But what are doing in this matter besides warning the public? Don't summarize what will happen to us. We already have a Minister of Defense. You should start doing something. What the State of Israel will do, the message that we give to the world has a significance. And the difference regarding the future of Israel is between catastrophe and hope. Knesset members, always Israel led the alliance of the moderates. The other nations changed according to political changes, but the basis Tamid always stayed moderate. The peace with Jordan and Egypt, our alliance with Morocco, Turkey, and the Gulf states, and all the bodies like the Palestinian Authority and not the Hamas. But it's true that a bad wind is blowing in our region. But a bad wind is also blowing in Jerusalem. These are the true partners of Israel. Maybe not your natural partners, but these are the natural partners of the State of Israel. And I admit that when you put the Turkish ambassador, I do not understand what is the objective in insulting Abu Mazen. Does somebody feel better by insulting him? Is the objective to cause that we don't have a partner, so that you can say that we don't have a partner? You say in this government that we should cancel the Palestinian Authority because they fight us in the UN. I'm opposed to the Abu Mazen appeal to the UN, and the Prime Minister was right to went to the UN and spoke at the UN. And it's not good for Israel that they were accepted today at UNESCO. But things continue to happen to us. When Israel does not initiate, things happen to us. Do you get comfort if U.S. will give budgets to UNESCO or not? When I sat here and listened to the Prime Minister I also saw how the Prime Minister considers not to cooperate with UNESCO. We continue to isolate ourselves. And when you talk about responsibility, ask yourself quietly, do you have a little bit of responsibility to what is happening to the state of Israel? We must remember that the negotiations is preferable to the diplomatic battles. And the diplomatic battles that are their fate is determined ahead of time is preferable to war and terror. But in the meantime, the one who gets stronger and gets the message that it's worthwhile to execute terror is the Hamas. Since the establishment of this government, the Hamas has gotten stronger. The Hamas is more legitimate. Again, you conduct negotiations about ceasefire, and you already started to call Jabri the chief of staff of the Hamas. And the hurtful truth that Israel is bending to those who operate terror and acts against those who want to cooperate, negotiate with it. And the result will be that the Hamas will be in control over Judea, Samaria, and then we will not have a partner because we have no chance to reach a settlement with the Hamas. The IDF is a strong army, and its ability to act is hurt, and his hands are tied because of the irresponsible behavior by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, whose election campaign was to be strong with the Hamas, you, Netanyahu, you're not strong with the Hamas. The IDF is strong with the Hamas. I am imagining what will be their campaign, that how we act, what will the other nations do vis-a-vis Hamas. This government acts in the opposite way. Instead of acting against extremists, we strengthen them. We strengthen the extremists and weakens the moderates. You're a tough negotiator? You don't negotiate. There's no negotiations. And it's not because of toughness and because of safeguarding the principles of the State of Israel, because every day Israel gets weaker. Knesset member, please leave the hall. Please leave the hall. Knesset member Okunis, please leave the hall, the session. Ladies and gentlemen, Knesset member Tzipi. There is an opportunity to correct it. It's not too late. We are after the deal that returned the soldier that was abdicated during Gilad Shalit, and along the happiness, the excitement, the tears, and the unity, and the happiness that was common to all of us. It is clear that the Hamas became stronger, not only because of that, but one correction that you can make now, Mr. Prime Minister, there are more prisoners that should be released. Please don't give them to the Hamas. Give them to the Egyptians, who will coordinate it with Abu Mazen. Knesset member Yariv Levin, if I have to prefer those who attack us in terror, I prefer those who deal with us diplomatically. That one thing that we must, once and for all, that we need to understand, it's not a matter of weakness. The only thing that can take us out of our situation, the only thing that can provide security to the state of Israel, that can take Israel out of its isolation, which will remove Israel from the agenda. Israel must to renew the alliance of the moderates and to start negotiations with Abu Mazen. This is the outermost Israeli interest to block the Hamas and the terrorist organizations politically, and this we will achieve immediately with negotiations in the short run. And I hope that we can reach a settlement so we can guard Israel as the national Jewish state. And in such action, you will find us in Kadima supportive and will allow you to do anything you can if you will only want to implement. Those who seek peace will get it. If this is what you will want to do, I can promise you they will also open negotiations with you, because I can tell you that it's not pleasant for me that they do not believe the Prime Minister of Israel. And this can come out of strikes, but my call will not be heard. So don't listen to me, Mr. Prime Minister. Listen to the security people in Israel. Listen, Mr. Prime Minister. Listen, Mr. Prime Minister, what the security people are saying, and listen to them in all areas regarding the Palestinian issue. Start negotiations for the security of Israel. Listen to them regarding the Turkish matter and settle the differences with Turkey. And there is the formula that can bring the relations back to what they were. And listen to them also in the Iranian matter. I believe in all my heart that a strategy that is integrated with pragmatism is critical for our future. Such a process will impact the quality of our life and our economy. And don't use the protest. This is a protest of once. We cannot talk about social justice when many years there is no justice and it is not accepted by the Israeli society. And this is the discussion that we all have to hold, Knesset members. It's true that I devoted to the political arena all my efforts, and this is why I entered politics, but also I'm, like many others, I was arisen by I woke up by the protest of the young people and the cry of the middle class. We are all open to the difficulties of many young talented people, young people like my children and their friends, and many thousands of young people. And I want to tell you today to thank you that you forced us all to put on the table, to put our viewpoint also in these matters, and not only to talk about political matters. Our viewpoint exists. We don't have to reinvent it. But the time has come to make decisions in these areas too. And we deserve better also in the social economic arena. In Israel and the entire world, many young people and the middle class and protested and asked for a change in the economical system. The swine capitalism has bankrupted. Centralization is suffering, and we do not get education. The middle class doesn't get the essential education, free education, the ability to acquire an apartment, and therefore we must change the economic system, but we should not, while we do the changes, to throw the baby with the bathwater. And not, Mr. Speaker, not everybody is the same. The two theories that we experienced, the socialism that destroyed the private initiative, we don't tend to return to it. And the hand of Netanyahu has to disappear. More than any government beforehand, the government of Netanyahu, according to his world viewpoint, has not held its responsibility to the public. The public sector, that he has contempt for all the services for the public have disappeared. I grew up in the private sector, and I always believed that with initiative, hard work, a person can go far. I also believe in equal opportunities. I also believe in the commitment of the government to its citizens to live honorably. We're not talking about charity, but about justice. I'm liberal, that's true. I believe in free markets, and even when you privatize, you do not remove the responsibility from the government. Liberalism is not one-dimensional. Competition should not be cruel, and free markets is not a wild jungle. The economic crisis taught us that it's not enough to have a successful economy. When there is no equality, it hurts the society, and society is in danger. Without involvement of the government, all of these achievements can reach the abyss. There are areas that we cannot live for competition. There are areas that the government should show responsibility. But to be in charge of everything, the government has to dictate the policy. And policy, Mr. Prime Minister, is not the same conduct with the mayors as who is for us and who is not for us. The same plutocracy of what was many years ago. In the last few months, we're talking about solidarity. As a liberal who believes in the belief that solidarity cannot be dictated, Solidarity cannot grow in a government where the public is neglected. Solidarity only succeeds when the citizens are sure that there is a contract of commitments and this Knesset has to listen to the voices that we heard from the middle class and the young people. This system has created preferences to special interests, and the middle class has been neglected, especially by this government. We in Kadima see ourselves responsible to all and represent the middle class, and to return the trust of the Israelis in their government. We have to cancel the reasons for this lie. A real change will be if we will present a new budget with new priorities. The attempt to avoid such a budget and to try to avoid introducing these necessary things indicates that your intentions are not serious, Mr. Prime Minister. And for this reason, Kadima has asked for a budget with new priorities. Don't be afraid to conduct this discussion in the Knesset. Don't be afraid that your coalition partners will blackmail you. We will work with you to decide new priorities for the state of Israel. Your weakness with the coalition cannot cause the Knesset after the last summer will decide on a new budget with new priorities. And thanks to who you are sitting in this chair. In this session, Kadima will start a revolution. We will introduce new legislation. In the area of education, equality of the government cannot give it to private sectors. We believe in free education since the early age. And this is how we will be able to help the good Israelis. When every child care center costs more than 3,000 shekels. Knesset member, you are disturbing. In the area of housing, the protest started because problem in housing. The government promised but didn't do anything. We will lead the legislation about housing, and we will advance the matter. And we will take into consideration the ability to earn a decent living. We will try to cancel some taxes, like the value-added tax. This is only the beginning. We do not intend to only be satisfied with it. Social justice is more than what we achieved so far. And there is no social justice if there is no justice for all. I believe in cooperation. I believe that every citizen in Israel must contribute to the country. And whoever does not serve in the army should devote a year or two of his life to a civil service in his community or in other communities. Equality is one of our values, but yes, we're talking about an expression of common guarantee that we all are so proud of in the last few days. And then, Mr. President, then we can also start that more Arabs and ultra-Orthodox will participate in the workplace. Therefore, the Kadima party will bring and push legislation that will define what is civil service for the government, for all its citizens, and to act against those who try to start life without committing the same obligation. And I also want to say something to the protesters today. I heard that there were disputes, arguments, whether to sing the national anthem. Instead of giving up on the symbols of Israel, let's determine its values. These values will be integrated with a national home for the Jewish people that will hurt the minorities. Let's anchor the values of Israel and not only the symbols. And social justice, it's also part of its values. My Star of David is not the one that is next to the hateful writings. And my Jewish soul is not at the expense of the other, but expresses the same hope that is implemented, that each and one of us could identify with. Friends, let's not be satisfied by just lowering prices, but changing the society, and let's struggle together. Decisions will be made in all areas, as difficult as they are, even despite this government.